Hello students, welcome to my class. I am Momita and today I'll be dealing with the poem A Tiger in the Zoo by Leslie Norris. Now A Tiger in the Zoo is a poem about a tiger which has been encaged in the zoo, right? The poet actually tries to figure out the difference between a tiger who is kept in the zoo and the tigers who are who lead their life in open forest. The difference in their lives. When a tiger is encaged in a zoo, it cannot exhibit its natural anger, its natural ferociousness. It becomes more or less tamed, right? Now, if you look at the board, you will see through the poem, the title actually, if you look at the title, The Tiger at the Zoo by Leslie Norris, it talks about a tiger in the zoo and then it contrasts with a tiger in its natural surrounding. What happens in the poem? The two tigers, the tiger in the zoo and the tiger in the forest, they have been contrasted. What happens to a tiger in the zoo? Even if a tiger in the zoo is angered by the presence of so many people, there is no way it can show its anger, right? It keeps on pacing up and down inside the small restricted cage, whereas the tiger which are in the open, which are left to find its own prey, they are more ferocious, they are more angry, they are free to exhibit their own natural quality. Okay, they are unable to exhibit its natural ferociousness and anger in the restricted surrounding of the zoo. And what message is given through the poem? Wild animals are best suited in their natural surrounding, and it is better not to intrude into their natural life and disturb them, to bring them among the human beings, because even their life is disturbed, that they don't find it to be very attractive. Even if you give them good food, they won't like it, because they are more accustomed to hunt, to pounce upon its prey. No matter how much comfort you give them, they still love their freedom. So when we encage an animal, we actually curtail their freedom, we take away their freedom, and they are not at all happy in the restricted atmosphere. Now I am going to discuss the poem paragraph wise. Let us do the first paragraph, and after that I will also discuss the figure of speech and the rhyme scheme of the poem. Now, the first line, what does it state? He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage, on pads of velvet quiet, in his quiet rage. Now, who does he refer to here? He refers to the tiger who is encaged in the zoo, right? So here we get a personification. He stalks. Stalks is a particular way of movement. When a tiger is about to jump on its prey, it stalks, it follows, right? So he stalks means he walks here. Actually, he is making a particular movement in his vivid stripes. Vivid refers to having deep bright colors. As you know, the tiger has very bright colors. So the tiger stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage. It shows the restricted environment in which the tiger is kept. So he stalks in his vivid stripes on pads of velvet white. On pads, what does the word pads means? Pad means the soft paws. When the tiger or the cats walk, they do not make any sound because of their soft paws. So when they walk, they do not make any sound, as a result of which it is said on pads of velvet white. So it walks with soft pad, which is similar to that of, which is as soft as velvet, and it walks quietly without making any sound. In his quiet rage. Rage means anger. As you can see here, it means violent, uncontrollable anger. He walks in his quiet rage. Why Now, why quiet rage? Because the tiger is not able to show his rage, that is anger, because he knows he is inside the cage and nobody will care to see, nobody will be bothered to see whether it is angry or pacified, right? So it walked, though it is very angry, yet it was not been able to show his anger. He was not been able to show his anger. Now I'll be doing paragraph number 2. What does it state? He should be lurking in the shadow, sliding through long grass, near the water hole where plump deer pass. Now, this is ideally what a tiger should do. Now here we find the first contrast between a tiger in the zoo and the tiger in its natural surrounding, that is in a forest. What should a tiger ideally do? He should be lurking in the shadow. Lurking means what? Remain hidden so as to wait in an ambush. Ambush means fight. So the tigers, they often hide themselves so that they can pounce upon their prey. So ideally a tiger should be lurking in the shadow. Sliding means moving through long grass near the water hole. Water hole are small ponds in the river, small ponds in a forest where all the animals come or gather to have their water, and it is the place where the tiger waits hidden so that it can pounce upon its favorite prey. So the tiger should be hiding near the water hole. Why? To catch the plump. Plump means fat, where the fat deer pass. So it waits there for its favorite hunt, that is the fat deer, right? Now this is where we come to know about what should be the ideal surrounding for a tiger. That is the third paragraph of the poem. It again tells us, it shows a contrast of what a tiger should ideally do in its natural surrounding and what it is doing instead. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. Now the tiger should be snarling. Snarling means giving an angry sound, warning sound around the houses which are located at the jungle's edge. Means he should be snarling at the villages which are located at the edge of the forest. Baring means exposing, showing his white fangs. Fangs here refer to the sharp canine teeth. He should be terrorizing the people, showing his canine teeth, sharp canine teeth and claws, and terrorizing the village. He should be snarling, he should be roaring and snarling around the houses which are located at the jungle's edge. He should be showing his bare teeth and claws, and thus he should create a panic among the people living in the forest. But instead the tiger lives inside a cage where nobody bothers to care about his anger, and he is even unwilling to show his anger because he knows that there is no use of showing his anger. He is restricted inside the iron bars, within the iron bars. He cannot come out, he cannot show others his anger and his power. So his power, his anger, everything has been under control. And who is controlling this? The human being. And in this way they have actually invaded upon the normal lives of why only the tiger, of all the wild animals. Now let us discuss the fourth paragraph. Now again it brings us to the present situation where the tiger is inside a concrete cell of the cage. but he is locked in the concrete cell. But instead of terrorizing the village people, instead of waiting near the water hole to catch its prey, what is he doing? He is locked up in a concrete cell. Concrete is, as you know, as you can see here, it's a mixture made up of cement, gravel, etc. His strength behind his bars, his strength, his anger, his ferociousness, everything is locked. Everything stands inside the bar, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. He is stalking, he is walking the length of his cage, and he is ignoring visitors because he knows that even if he tries to show his anger to the visitors, they would not be bothered in any way because he is locked up in the concrete cell. Only his energy would be wasted. So he remains there. He just keeps on pacing up and down the small area of the cage and shows his anger quietly. Right? Now, we will do the next paragraph now. Now, this is the last paragraph of the poem, where we find the tiger in a very sad mood, in an extreme sad mood, in an extreme depression. He hears the last voice at night. At night, when everyone retires, he hears the last voice of the night. Whose are these voices? These voice belongs to the guard who comes in their car. The patrolling cars, the patrolling cars are also gone, and he hears the last voice, and he knows that he has to be inside the cage, and he would never get freedom. But still, there is hope in his eyes. He stares with his brilliant eyes. The word brilliant suggests hope, that one day perhaps he would be free. And what instills this hope in him? The brilliant stars in the open sky. The shining stars in the open sky, where their area is not restricted, where they are free. The sky, in the sky, the stars have an enormous space, and this reminds the tiger of the open space where he used to be, that is in the forest, and this brings hope, and his eyes glitters. After everyone retires, he hears the last voice and he hears the sound of the patrolling cars, and then when everyone retires, once more the glittering stars infuses him with new hope, that is the hope for freedom. And here we will end the discussion of the meaning of the poem. Now we would discuss about the rhyme scheme and the literary devices which are used in this poem. I have discussed the meaning of the poem. Now we would concentrate on the literary devices used in the poem, and along with that we will also check the rhyme scheme of the poem. Now if you look at the board, you will see I have made a chart of the literary devices which are used in this poem. Now it will be better if you note it down, because that will be helpful when I will be doing explaining you the literary devices line by line. So in paragraph number 1 we have personification, enjambment, assonance. Don't worry, I am going to discuss each of these literary devices in detail. And then we have consonants, assonance in line number 1, consonance line number 1, metaphor line number 3, oxymoron line number 4, and throughout the paragraph we also see imagery. In paragraph 2 we have personification, imagery, alliteration in line number 4, and enjambment. That is also throughout the poem. Paragraph 3, onomatopoeia line number 1, assonance line number 1 and line number 3. Other than that we have enjambment and imagery which keeps on running throughout the stanza, and we also have consonants in line number 4. In paragraph number 4 we have personification, imagery and enjambment running throughout the stanza. In line number 1 and 4 we have assonance, consonants in line number 2, and alliteration in line number 2. And in paragraph 5, personification, imagery, enjambment, same thing. All these three literary devices are are found throughout the stanza. Other than that, in line number 1 we have alliteration, and in line number 3 we have assonance. Now I'll be discussing these figure of speech to you one by one. Now it might be a little confusing because the whole poem is packed with literary devices. So you will come to know about many literary devices once I end the poem. Now once again, coming to paragraph number 1, I have said you that this poem has personification, enjambment, assonance, consonance, metaphor, oxymoron and imagery. Now let us understand, first of all, let us understand what these things means. Now personification refers to the part of speech where a non-living or a non-human is projected as a human being. So see, in the very first line we get to see he. Who is this he? The tiger. Which is not a human being, it is an animal, but it is projected as a human being. So in the very first line we get a personification. He stalks in his vivid stripes. Personification spelled as personification. Personification. Okay. Now what is enjambment? Thus we get personification in this paragraph. Other than that, we also have enjambment and imagery which runs throughout the paragraph. Now what is an enjambment? Enjambment is the continuation of the sentence in more than one line. Like he stalks in his vivid stripes, the few moments of his cage, the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet, and finally the sentence ends here on the last line, that is in his quiet rage. So this is an example of enjambment, and it is spelled as ENJAMBMENT. It's enjambment. I repeat, ENJAMBMENT. So enjambment is the figure of speech in which the sentence continues in more than one line. Now the third figure of speech, or the third poetic device that we get here is the use of imagery. IMAGERY. Now what is this? Imagery is actually creating picture through words. You can almost visualize the situation. In this poem, the poet has described the scene so beautifully that we can almost visualize a tiger walking in his cage. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage on pads of velvet white in his quiet rage. So thus the whole paragraph gives us a picture, or helps us to visualize the tiger walking inside the cage. So here we get the use of imagery. Thus in the first paragraph till now we got personification, we got enjambment, we got imagery, and now we will also get assonance and consonance here. Now what actually is assonance and consonance? Now see, assonance, consonance and alliteration, these actually deals with sounds, vowel sounds and consonant sounds. Assonance is the repeated use of the same vowel sound in between or at the end of the word, and consonance is the repeated use of consonant sound at the beginning or at the end of word, which are placed one after another. Alliteration, on the other hand, may be the use of any sound, whether be it vowel or be it consonant, at the beginning of the consecutive words. So I repeat again, alliteration. In alliteration, the sounds are repeated, the similar sounds or the same sounds are repeated at the beginning of the consecutive words. In assonance, the same vowel sounds are repeated in a sentence or in a words, in a line, where words are in a line, and they are found in the words which are placed very close to each other. So assonance, I repeat again, use of vowel sounds in consecutive words, and these sounds, these vowel sounds, has to be in the middle or at the end of the sentence, or otherwise middle or the end of the words, anywhere in the word, but not at the beginning. If it is used again and again in the beginning, then it would become alliteration. And consonance is the repeated use of consonant sounds at the beginning, at the middle or at the end or anywhere in the word, but not at the beginning, or else it would be an alliteration. Thus we get the get consonants and assonance both in line number 1. Now in line number 1, you see the repeated use of the I sound in, his, I, vivid, stripes. So here we have assonance spelled as ASSONANCE, assonance, repeated use of vowel sound. Now in the same line we also have consonants spelled as CONSONANCE, that is repeated use of consonant sound, and we get that in the repeated use of S sound, stalks, his, stripes, right? So we got personification, we got enjambment, we got imagery, we got assonance and consonance in paragraph number 1. Now we would deal with line number 3, where we get metaphor. Now what is a metaphor? Metaphor is a figure of speech which is used to compare things. Both metaphor and simile are used to compare, right? Now in metaphor the point of comparison is not clear, but in simile the point of comparison is very clear. Now when I say she is as beautiful as a rose, here I know that what is the point of comparison? Beauty. The beauty of the lady is similar to the beauty of the rose. But when I say she is a rose, it does not means that the lady has become a rose, right? So what does it mean? It means that the beauty of the lady is compared to the beauty of the rose, but the point of comparison is not very clear. So when we use words such as like, such, as to compare things, then it is simile. And when we do not use such words like, as, such, then that is metaphor. See, pads of velvet. This does not mean that the pads or the paws of the lion are made up of velvet. It means the paws are as soft as velvet. So here we get our next figure of speech or poetic device, which is metaphor. The last figure of speech or the poetic device which we get here is oxymoron. Now it is spelled as OXYMORON. Now oxymoron is a poetic device in which opposite words or antonyms are placed one after another. Now see here the use of the words quiet and rage. Quiet means peaceful, calm, while rage means anger, right? So here two opposite meaning words are placed one after another. So here we get oxymoron, quiet, rage. Thus we end paragraph number 1. Now regarding the rhyme scheme, it's A, B, C, B. Now I'll match it here. Stripes A, cage B, quiet C, and rage matches with cage. So again B. So the rhyme scheme becomes A, B, C, B. And the same rhyme scheme continues throughout the poem. Now let us have a look at the second paragraph. The rhyme scheme remains the same, that is A, B, C, B, shadow, grass, hole and pass. Shadow, grass rhymes with pass, otherwise there is no other rhyming word. So A, shadow, B, grass, C, hole, and Last one is again B, grass and pass, they rhymes. Now coming to the rhyme scheme, again we have personification. In the usage of he, we have personification where the tiger has been compared to a human being. Again there is an imagery. You are forced to visualize a scene where you see the tiger lurking in the shadow, and in the forest it is waiting near the water hole. So we also get imagery here. Other than that, we get enjambment, because the sentence does not complete in one line, it keeps on continuing. Shadow, he should be lurking in the shadow, sliding through the long grass near the water hole where plum deer pass. And the meaning ultimately, the sentence ultimately ends with the end of the paragraph, with the end of the stanza. So we also get enjambment here. Only alliteration in line number 4, we find it with the P sound. Plum deer, plum deer pass, per plum, p, 3 P's. So here we find only alliteration, ALLI TERATION, that is the repeated use of one sound at the beginning of the word per. We also get a per here, so we have only alliteration here. Other than that, we have the regular use of enjambment, imagery and personification. Now coming to paragraph number the third paragraph, we again have the same use of personification with the use of he. Imagery, again we can visualize a tiger moving around the houses at the edge of the forest. So we have imagery, and along with that we also see the enjambment. The sentence doesn't end in one line, it keeps on continuing, so we have enjambment. In all the paragraphs you will find these 3 figure of speech, that is imagery, enjambment and personification. Okay, now other than that, in paragraph number 3 we have another figure of speech in line number 1, which is onomatopoeia, spelt as ONOMATOPOEIA. Very confusing spelling. ONOMATOPOEIA, onomatopoeia. Now what is onomatopoeia? Onomatopoeia are sounding words like buzzing of the bees. With the word buzz, you can almost hear the buzzing of the bees. Hissing of the snake, hissing of the snake, or rattling of the snake, rustling of the leaves, creaking of the doors. These are sound words. They'll tell you about the sound. Here we get the first sound word, which is snarling of the tiger. So there is an onomatopoeia here, snarling of the tiger at the jungle's edge. Okay, now other than this, we have in line number 1 and in line number 3 we have assonance, that is repeated use of vowel sound. Where do we get that? We get the usage of O sound again and again in line number 1. Should O, around O, houses O. Use of O sound is very prominent here, so this is an example of assonance. And again in line number 4 also we have another assonance, which is in the use of I sound, barring, his, white, his. I sound is very prominent, so we have an assonance here. Other than that, we have a consonance in line number 4 in the use of the S sound, his, fangs, claws, S sound. So we also have consonants here. So in this paragraph we have 5 figure of speech, or 5 poetic devices. Now coming to the 4th stanza, let us see the figure of speech once again. Before that, the rhyme scheme remains the same, that is A, B, C, B. Number 4 also we get assonance. Ignoring visitors, we get the use of the I sounds. ignoring visitors in the middle of the word. So here also we get assonance, and we get consonance in line number 4, which is in the use of. Now in line number 2 of the 4th paragraph, we get a consonant in the consonants in the repeated use of the S sound. See, S, his, strength, S, bars, S. So in the repeated use of S sound we get consonants. Assonance is also found in line number 4. Line number 4 also we get assonance in the use of I sound, ignoring I, visitor I, both the I's. So in line number 2 we get, line number 2 and 4 we get assonance, and in line number 2 we get consonants also. Other than that we get alliteration here in line number 2. His strength behind bars, ba, B sound, repeated use of B sound, so we get alliteration. So consonants, assonance and alliteration, all these three sounds, all these three literary devices, poetic devices are found in paragraph number 4. Rhyme scheme remains the same, that is A, B, C, B. Now in the final stanza also the same rhyme scheme is continued, and the regular figure of speech which is used in all the stanza, that is the imagery, the enjambment and the personification are found in this paragraph also. Other than that, in this paragraph we get alliteration and assonance. There is one alliteration in line number 1. He hears the last voice at night. He hears. Her sound, H, H. So here is an alliteration in the first line, and then in line number 3 there is an assonance. See, the use of I sound is very prominent here, with I, his eye, brilliant. So usage of repeated I sound, so we get an assonance here. The rhyme scheme, as I've said you, remains the same, and other than that, personification, enjambment and imagery, they are also found in this poem. Thus we have completed discussing the rhyme scheme, the poetic devices found in the poem. Along with that, we have also discussed the poem line by line. Hope this video has been useful to you. Thank you.